2. Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap here, of course, with the Trashman. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Sorry for being a day late. We're going to have a podcast this week on Wednesday and Thursday. Had some stuff to take care of yesterday. They kind of got in the way of everything, but a lot of content to get. Trashman, I can't believe it's only, starting tomorrow, it'll be 3 weeks before I leave for Kansas City for the NFL draft. 3 weeks to the day.
Are you going to stay in the animal house?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be a bunch of animals I'm staying with, dude. All the player profiler bros, man. So should be a good time. It'll be a bunch of good content coming out of there. We'll simulcast some of that stuff that I'm on.
I think I might be down there in Florida with Byron for that.
Okay. Well, I guess you guys will be making fishing content, I think. All right. So a couple things to get to here. We're gonna break down Eric Gray. We have a bunch of these prospect profiles to catch up on, so we're just gonna go over those. Eric Gray from Oklahoma, the running back. Izzy Abanikanda from Pitt, the running back, and Zach Charbonnet, the running back out of UCLA. They all have intriguing skill sets, and they're all going to factor in at least to our top 10s, if not our top 5s at the position. I'll be interested to hear where Trashman kind of has some of these guys. But before we get into that, speaking of just how we stack up these positions, how we stack up these players, I haven't had a chance to talk to Trashman since the TCU Pro Day last week, where I was there to watch Quentin Johnston and to some degree kind of get some information on Kendre Miller. And I was, Trashman, you had Quentin Johnston ranked as your number 1 wide receiver in this class, even over Jackson Smith and Jigbo, which I've always thought was wrong. Now, with Quentin Johnston going and running basically what was a 4.53 and a 4.50 by the scouts times. So we probably have to adjust that to a 4.55, 4.58 as far as his 40. He had the bad 3-cone. The 17th percentile 3-cone. I think it was, we tweeted out, the videos of those 3 cones. They did not look good. Very DK Metcalf-ish to them. Not that it hurt Metcalf, right? So, but
and that's what I'm saying with this guy. He's like a DK
wait,
Metcalf.
No. Let me just say the rest. He also his hands are like, I worry about his hands after that pro day, dude. I really worry about his hands. And, that was something on his profile that we said if he can correct at the NFL level, it's a part of his profile that maybe I wasn't thinking enough about, saying like, oh, no, he'll get that under control. He really did have some drops in that pro day. And some of those balls were balls that Duggan put right on him. I mean, they were deep balls. He had to track them. I probably wouldn't have caught it. I would have fallen down and lost my shoes and everything else, right? But for a guy that wants to be a first-round NFL wide receiver, and for a guy who you have as your number 1 prospect in the class, I worry a little bit about that. Do you still think that? I mean, are you still going to die on this Quentin Johnston hill? Over Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Okay, so part of my evaluation, part of how I rank these two is based on how I think a team will use them, will implement them in the NFL at the next level. And I still think that Quentin Johnston projects to be more of your number 1, X receiver at the next level, more so than in Jackson, Smith and Jigba. Like you said, like it was Metcalf, like Johnson, he's just a Metcalf type of.
He's not as big. He's not as freaky. No
one's quite like DK Metcalf.
He's scared to run his 3-cone.
Metcalf's a once in a generation type of.
The scouts had to talk him into running a short shuttle. I'm cooling off on QJ, man. Like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
A player of his size and stature, and this far removed from the season too, and what he's doing, it doesn't break the bank for me. I don't know.
It does break our rankings when you have him at number 1 and we have a consensus rankings where it's like no matter what happens, he's going to be our number 2 wide receiver. I'm not sure that I want him number 2 anymore. Byron's going to come in and
who would you have over him at number 2? Like
at this point, I want Zay Flowers more than I want Quentin Johnston.
I mean, I'll have to go and look at more tape from both players, not, aside from just the highlights and see.
If Jordan Addison didn't weigh 173,
but that's the thing. There are all these,
but he does. I get it. He does. We can't change that. To me, do you know what this really says to me? Quentin Johnston weighs damn 173. Josh Downs comes in and how much does he weigh? Josh Downs. I'm sorry. Jordan Addison comes in, he's 173. Josh Downs comes in, he's 171. You're like, well, shit. One thing I will say about Quentin Johnston is he did run at 212, so it wasn't like he did this thing from the combine where he lost weight to go run the pro day.
And the thing is, too, you kind of have to. I mean, like. I have to take pro days and even the combine with some grain of salt compared to what these guys did in season. I mean, we've seen a body of work from Quentin Johnston,
and we use these things to confirm or make us go back to the tape and look at things. And to me, Quentin Johnston has not confirmed anything through this process. He's made me question things and made me want to go back through the tape. And when I do, I look back at the original evaluation that says what we had worries about the hands. And his hand, he looks like he did not have natural hands in that pro day. He just didn't. And if we're talking about a guy that's going to be a contested catch dude who's going to, obviously we're not talking about a guy who at this point is going to, take the top off of a defense running a 4-5-5. To me, it's an extra puzzle piece, and it's a check on the process, right? But in this case, with what the signal that we're getting from this Quentin Johnston pre-draft evaluation process is, there's some things that you need to go back and check about your evaluation. So I just think that's what you should do.
What's it? At worst, is he, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who could be the number 1 receiver on the Cleveland Browns? It's like a player of that size and stature. Depending on where they are and how you use them, I think there's just more chance of him succeeding than a lot of those other wide receivers in the NFL.
Not more than Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was
that's the one that there's.
So you're going to at least get him below Smith and Jigba after all these questions. You're at least.
I feel like Byron will be the.
I want you to be true to your own rankings, and I know you like JSN better, and you're just being a contrarian trash man putting QJ over him. Let's fix that error, and you can have him at 2, and I'll have him at 4 or 5 or wherever it is I have him. It probably won't be that low because, like I said, I mean, what am I going to do? But get Josh Downs or over him? I think Zay Flowers is the one that I feel more comfortable about because he's got 10 pounds on both of these guys. Right. So we can discuss it further, but little bug in your ear, trash man. Get JSN over Quentin Johnston, man. Don't make this something where we all look dumb later on.
I don't think it would be that big of a misstep, but
let's get JSN over him in your personal rankings. I don't care what you do for the rest of them. And the other thing I just wanted to hit on before we get to these other evaluations, I'm looking at so you updated on the 4th yesterday. You updated, but you did not write that you updated it, like I always tell you to, or ask you to, I should say. You're a grown man. I don't tell you to do shit.
Except put Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 1.
I am telling you that. I am telling you that. I
think Byron will put him over.
And then so make sure to always update the sheet to the date that you whenever you updated it, just up there in the title, just so people know. Okay, as I'm looking at it, I think the updates that you made are fine. I like what you did with DeAndre Swift. I have one issue though that's never been really that's never stood out to me before, and I don't know why. So just let me ask you this question: why do we have Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave underneath Jalen Waddle in Dynasty?
I mean,
Should we?
Yeah, I mean, based on what they've done so far, and
if you just look at last season, the only way that Jalen Waddle outproduced these guys is he doubled them both up in touchdowns. I believe both Chris Olave and Garrett. How many touchdowns?
And he did that with Tyreek Hill opposite him.
Well, he's going to have Tyreek Hill opposite him for during the whole time that Tua Tagovailoa is there, and then Mike McDaniel is the coach. That's the way the offense has been built.
I mean, with Tyreek Hill, was he 29, 30?
How old's Tyreek? I think he's 28. Let me just see though. So Tyreek Hill he's 28 now. He'll be 29 next year. But we're talking about two 25-year-old studs that are probably two of the best players in the league at the wide receiver position.
And Waddle, if Tyreek Hill was not there, Waddle would have put up astronomical numbers.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts every day.
I mean, and Christmas. Michael Thomas is coming back to the Saints. Okay, so that might throw a wrench in the works for Chris Olave.
Well, let me throw that same thing back at you. How old is Michael Thomas?
Wilson has some competition too.
Yeah, but he's also getting Aaron fucking Rodgers. We think.
But Aaron Rodgers is also getting his receiver from the Packers.
Who sucks?
Alongside with him.
Well, I mean, we could have said the same thing we could have said the same thing about you shouldn't like Christian Watson last year because Aaron Rodgers is getting Randall Cobb.
Waddle's a G. We've seen it work. We've seen him at work. We've seen him execute. We've seen him.
You would rather have a 25-year-old Jalen Waddle than a 22-year-old Chris Olave or a 22-year-old Garrett Wilson? Man, if that's the case, Trash Man, in any of your dynasty,
based on their current situations, just right now, then yes.
Okay, what about for dynasty?
When Aaron Rodgers comes to the Jets, I'll make an adjustment. But hasn't happened.
Why didn't you adjust Chris Olave up when Derek Carr went to the Saints? He's there
because then Michael Thomas got re-signed, and
but Jarvis Landry won't come back, so that's about a tit for tat. I think Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave should be over Jalen Waddle, and I don't know if that's consensus, but if it's anywhere close to consensus, we should think about making that move. I'm not demanding it like I'm demanding you get JSN over.
I mean, I'm fine. I'm moving Wilson up when Rodgers gets there, but that just hasn't happened yet, and there's not a lot happening right now in free agency, so I can't make, I need to be calculating about the moves I make, over the course of a week.
But just to me, it just looks so wrong. I'm just like, dude, I would so much rather have Olave or Garrett Wilson at 22 years old than Jalen Waddle, an entrenched number 2 wide receiver with a little bit of a murky
who performs better than most number ones.
Right, but if the touchdown stuff didn't happen last year,
it did.
But he doubled both those guys up in touchdowns. Do you really think that's? Do you really think that's going to continue?
Well, yeah, why not?
Jalen Waddle last year had 117 targets and 75 receptions for 1356 and 8 touchdowns. Okay, I mean, so Chris Olave had 119 targets, 72 receptions. It's basically the exact. It's like almost the exact same, but he only had 4 touchdowns. Garrett Wilson last year had 147, so more targets, more receptions at 83, but he only had the 4 touchdowns. That's the only difference. If you mean to tell me that guys like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson aren't going to regress to touchdown-wise as true alpha number 1,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying until a couple things I think have to happen before I'm moving those guys up. I can
understand why you would have Waddle above him in redraft. I totally get it. And I know that that's the thing that you've been saying is that Garrett Wilson, we can't get him above we can't maybe above Amon-Ra St. Brown, but not above Waddle. And you've always said never Waddle, never Waddle, never Waddle. And in redraft, I think that's fine, right? Because like you said, the situation right now, right this instant. But for Dynasty, we know that both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, they were our number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in the class last year, one of our favorite classes that we've ever had. They're both in situations that are better. They're both in situations that are improving. They both were studs last year across all of the best metrics.
Yards, and you'd be saying the same thing about Waddle if Waddle was actually implemented in his program to the extent that he should have been. I mean, Waddle was an amazing prospect. He was like a Damian Pearson that we just hadn't seen that much of.
Let's just another bug in the ear. let's get Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave above Jalen Waddle in Dynasty. I mean, I think it's I just feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth that I feel like this is so right. This is absolutely what I do, but my products on my website aren't you know what I'm saying? Like you have a gun to your head in Dynasty. You're not taking Garrett Wilson or Olave over Jalen Waddle, who's 3 years older. Like, I really think that we should move those guys up.
It's a bird in hand kind of thing, and just right now because Aaron Rodgers is not.
Okay, fine. You promise once Aaron Rodgers gets there, Garrett Wilson and Olave get moved. Olave just gets moved up too, for some reason. Okay, for whatever sense that makes. All right. Do you want to talk about Eric Gray first?
All right.
So Eric Gray, my thoughts. Man, he's a guy that I've had on one of my Devy squads for ever since the year that he transferred from Tennessee to Oklahoma. When I look at him, he did not participate at the combine in a lot of the in a lot of the testing. What did he end up running? So he ran it was the 4.63, which was
4.57.
It was a 4. Well, I mean, what was reported by NFL Network from that pro day was a 4.63.
Really?
Yeah. Where did you get the 4.57? Just on Twitter or something?
Yeah, it was a projected.
Yeah, no. That's so he ran a hand time 4.63, which is miserable, right? I don't see him being that slow. I mean, we saw him at the Senior Bowl. He was an all Senior Bowl guy, a 4-star prospect coming out in 2019. He's one of the better receiving backs in the nation, right?
He ran 87 hand time one individual hand timed him at 4.63.
No, his best was 4.63 was the scout consensus. And let me just look. I have the list of the pro day stuff here. Let me just make sure on that, because that was something that I just saw reported on Twitter that one day. Let me just see. There's this database that gets kept up by this dude. Shout out at Alex Katzton on Twitter. He keeps a really good one here. And it looks like Eric Gray, he has his at a 4.62. Okay, so 4.62, it might be a 4.62. I saw that the scout consensus was a 4.63. Regardless, we're looking at a 4.67 at the combine, so it's no wonder he didn't run. That's slow, right? It's not game-breaking speed. It's definitely bringing me down some on Eric Gray from where I originally had him.
Well, that was something I included in my initial evaluation, was his lack of long speed.
Yeah. And the fact that, look, he's a really good, he's one of the better pass catching backs, that I've really seen in these last couple of years. I mean, he has really good hands. Like Cody, our friend Cody Carpentier said at the Senior Bowl, really soft hands, just like a man who hadn't worked a day in his life. Just really, really soft. And you could tell, man, like the way he's the anti Quentin Johnston, right? The balls don't slap off his hands and make horrible noises that reverberate through the whole indoor facility.
I mean, he's a really well-rounded running back. I mean, he can really do anything that you need, that you ask from him. He accelerates quickly, even though he isn't, he doesn't possess game-breaking speed. Like a couple of these other backs do. But he's really instinctive, great vision, works well in space, just really well-rounded.
He's 5'9.5", 210 pounds for those who don't know kind of the body size of Eric Gray. He's a compact guy.
Devontae Freeman.
My comp for him was, do you remember Kylan Hill now for the Packers?
Yeah.
He for some reason he reminds me of Kylan Hill coming out. I like the way that I like the way I forgot what Kylan Hill's pass catching profile was. I don't think he was 87th percentile target share, but I did like him in the All-Star workouts catching the football. He looked similar to me, and the frame looks similar. Whenever you look at the comparisons, say from like mock draftable, one of them is J.K. Dobbins. It's an 89.4% match. I think
for Gray.
Yeah. think that that's kind of, I thought that was interesting. That, just from a pure physical standpoint, that they would consider him to be a good comp based on the testing. But
I feel like Dobbins a little bit bigger, but I ain't going to.
Yeah, I mean, Dobbins is he's a shade bigger. I mean, like Dobbins, the weight that they're using from his 2022 would be, let's see, J.K. Dobbins. The weight they're using for him was no. I mean, dude, I can't believe this. J.K. Dobbins was only 209 pounds.
Yeah.
So, not a lot of good. I mean, there's a Duke Johnson comp out there. I kind of I kind of like that better.
Duke Johnson?
Yeah.
I feel like Duke's more of a. Gray? I feel like he's more of a passing back than a Gray. I feel like
Gray's a great passing back. He's.
But that's all that Duke Johnson is to me.
Okay. Well, I think Eric Gray could have a Duke Johnson kind of role. Right. Do you love him between the tackles?
I mean, I think he's solid between the tackles. That's why I compared it to like a Devontae Freeman. I mean, someone who is more compact, ability to catch passes, but can get you the yards in between the tackles.
Do you like him more than Tyjae Spears?
Let me see the metrics on Spears. I mean, Spears is smaller.
Much better 40.
Faster.
And he's not that much smaller. 204 compared to 210. He's 5'9.5". He's got bigger 10-inch hands. He did have the injury. He did have the knee surgery on his record. I'm taking Tyjae Spears at this point over Eric Gray.
To me, it's splitting hairs.
Well, this is in NFL evaluation. You got to split hairs. Who do you rather have? They're both out there. They're both available to you. Who are you taking?
I'd probably take Spears.
Okay. But both these guys are in a different tier than where you have guys like Devon Achane, Roschon Johnson, these kinds of players. It's a different stratosphere.
I don't know if it's a different stratosphere, but maybe a
different tier. Okay. One guy that's in a different tier than even those guys, I think, for me, is Izzy Abanikanda from Pittsburgh. He came out after a junior season, 5'11", 216, small little 8.25-inch hands, but he ran a 4.41 at his pro day. So we'll adjust that up to a 4.46 and give him that. Really good production profile this year. 48% market share of team rushes, 30% market share of team total scrimmage yards, and a 49% market share of total team touchdowns. Only a 5% market share of team receptions, which is a little bit worrisome as far as his profile there. We like guys that have, not everybody's going to have a 10% target share, but man, if that thing can creep up to 7-8%, I feel a little bit more comfortable with it like that. I'll also say with those touchdowns, 21 total scrimmage touchdowns last year, it was interesting to me that 30% of his rushing touchdowns came against non-Power 5 competition. So maybe a little bit of something there to, think about is he did have, a couple games versus, he had 4 touchdowns in one game versus like New Hampshire or something like that. And then he got in a couple times versus Duke and some other schools like this. But he has shown the ability to absolutely take over football games. He had if you watch the game versus Virginia Tech, 320 rushing yards.
320 yards.
Yeah, 6 touchdowns. I mean, he was one of the nation's most prolific running backs in 2022. He had a 97 percentile dominator rating, 5'11", 216 pounds. Like I said, small little 8.25-inch hands. It's almost like the way that he runs and just sort of the way that he plays, he
reminds me of Frank Gore.
Do you know Gore? Huh.
He's like Frank Gore shot out of a cannon.
Well, I mean, that would be a lot better. I mean, he reminds me of Pacheco. He reminds me of Pacheco. My main deal with him is, look, he stepped into an offense that lost Kenny Pickett and that lost Jordan Addison to the transfer portal, right? He became the driving force of that offense. He absolutely carried the load. One of the nation's top running backs statistically. He has absolutely proven production. He went for over 110 yards in all but 2 of his 2022 games. I mean, if you look at PFF, his numbers are like PFF in 2022, out of 251 running backs, he was 18th in PFF rushing grade. He was 13th in rushing over 10 yards. He did that 38 times. 17th in designed rushing attempts over 15 yards. He did that 19 times. 6th in rushing yardage on designed rush attempts. 6th in designed rushing yardage over 15 yards with 631 yards, and 15 in total first downs with 73. So obviously prolific. He's a statistical, monster, right? But if you just look at his style of play, for one, his three cone and stuff from the pro day, it's all perfectly normal, right? Even maybe a little bit good for a running back. But he doesn't really have functional lateral agility the way that I would like to see it.
But you don't really need to see it. I mean, he's a one cut and up kind of guy.
Well, he's a straight line runner that reminds me of Isaiah Pacheco. He can hit the hole violently. I mean, that's completely true. And if he does that when he stays clean, it's off to the races. It's like see you later. I mean, that's like he's definitely a threat, right? With the football in his hands. You don't produce the way that he did last year without being that kind of athletic specimen. With that being said, it's like whenever he gets to the second and third levels of the defense, it just feels to me like he's just not as elusive on tape as you would imagine based on just such gaudy production and the fact that he's just such a size speed guy. Like if you look at his size, you look at his speed, you look at his production, you look at just how he looks. I mean, the guy looks like $1 million. You think to yourself, well, geez, this should be one of the top running backs in the class. There are just times from him wherever, I look at it, I say, well, he didn't break out until his final year in college. There wasn't much of a run mix at Pitt. It was mainly zone. He's not used as much as you'd like to see in the passing game. He drops too many passes. He has small hands. He needs to work in pass protection. Like there are things like that I just kind of worry about with Izzy Abanikanda. It sounds like, and for fantasy, I think it's fine in dynasty to take him at the back end of like round 2 in one quarterback pre-NFL draft dynasty rookie drafts.
I mean, if you're looking for a back with upside.
Yes. I think it's there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's there. I mean, clearly it's there. I think that there are just things that scouts are going to pick apart about his game that, that I see in his game. And I'm not sure he's going to get that day 2 draft capital, which doesn't always matter. Look at Dameon Pierce from last year. He was a bit of an outlier, but that's my take on him. I feel like Abanikanda is one of these guys. If you're the dynasty player who can stomach just building a stable of running backs through the later rounds of your drafts and really building around just an elite core of wide receivers based on those sort of prospect profiles. He's the kind of guy you can stack into one of those and hope that they pop. And I think that there's a decent chance that it does.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not so do you like Abanikanda as much as you like Spears and Gray? Do you like him more?
I think he's more dynamic than both of them.
Are you going to rank him ahead of those guys?
I probably will.
I think I might. I think I might too. Okay, finally, let's talk about Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. And he's the one for me that I came out of this evaluation feeling much more differently than I did just from my initial review of just like watching highlights and stuff like that, right? Once I sat down and watched the games, I saw, Zach Charbonnet is good. He's good. He's a good player. He reminds me of of a mix of Rachaad White and David Montgomery. David
Reminds me
Montgomery.
of Matt Forte.
Okay. Well, that's kind of like a David Montgomery, Rachaad White mix, except better. I mean, he's 6 foot, 214 pounds, got giant, almost 10-inch hands. He was a 4-star in 2019, went to Michigan, broke out as an 18-year-old at Michigan. Then in Michigan, they were one of the Big Ten schools that shut everything down for COVID. So they didn't. I even forgot what they did up there. Like they did, what did they do? They played like 3 games or something. Once everybody else started playing, they're like, oh shit, like I guess we got to play. So I think they played at the end of the season. Charbonnet gets out of there, goes to UCLA, and it's just been good. He led the nation in 2022 for all-purpose yards per game, 168 per game. Ran for at least 100 yards in 8 of 10 games in 2022. He's a Doak Walker semifinalist. He's got absolute feature back size. He has I'm not sure he's got the best vision in this class because Bijan Robinson's in this class, but he's so very decisive and intentional with what he's doing. Three down skill set. We talk about Eric Gray being 87th percentile target share. We're talking a 93rd percentile target share here for Zach Charbonnet. He's excellent at surviving first contact, both as a runner and a receiver.
Which Rachaad White is not.
Well, Rachaad White had the receiving excellence on his profile coming in, though, right? Yeah. But he's not the tough finisher that Charbonnet is. You know what I'm saying? Like and just the way that Charbonnet is just so flexible. Charbonnet goes out and runs routes, right? And he's flexible, framing the ball, like catching it outside his frame, like, you know, getting in weird spots and getting upfield somehow. He has this natural inclination to fall forward. As far as if you look at PFF, he converted 78.4% of his carries with 3 or less yards to go over the past 2 seasons, while recording the 4th most conversions in college football over that span. That was 69. So that means he's not going to be a guy that NFL staffs take out at the goal line. My thing with Charbonnet is I say, you know, he's hard to bring down through the line of scrimmage because he has this natural ability to shed tacklers. He's got these piston pumping knees that people just don't want to get, like, they don't want to get even their face mask jacked with one of these things. He just has a lot of leg drive, a whole lot of power, a real weight room guy. But where people say he doesn't have lateral agility. I'm not sure that's true. He had a good 3-cone. He had a perfectly average short shuttle, right?
I don't know that he doesn't have lateral agility. I just think he doesn't need to use it as much as some of these guys, maybe.
Yeah. I think when he gets to the second level, he can get bogged down coming into interactions with those linebackers and those DBs.
Well, he tends to lean on his power maybe more than he should.
He'll just kind of lower his shoulder and go into those things. He'll drive his legs. He'll fall forward. As far as just open field elusiveness, you don't see it quite as much with Zach Charbonnet. And the way that I sort of square that in my mind and don't worry about it is that, you know, he runs a 4.5. He was a 4.5 340. So it's fine, right? It's not home run speed. So it's like he's not going to be running past those corners anyway, right? But we know coming in he's not going to be a guy who could turn a little hole, you know, just into a complete house call, right? But he's an awesome zone running back that penetrates that lane, is decisive, man. He gets upfield, and he's not going to leave much meat on the bone. He was tied for 6th place among those same 251 running backs we talked about earlier when comparing Eric Gray. 6th place in 2022 for rushes over 10 yards. He had 44 of those. He was 5th in players as far as designed runs over 15 yards. He had those 24 times. So to me, Zach Charbonnet, a top 5 back in this class, possibly top 3 behind Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's where I see him right now. I'm curious, Trashman, your thoughts on Charbonnet. What did you think when you saw him? And then you could talk about, you know, if you're with me thinking maybe RB3. How how you compare him to Kendre Miller, how you compare him to Roschon, how you compare him to A-Chain, some of the rest of these guys that we sort of have floating around in that top 5 discussion.
I mean, yeah, just big body back who can catch. I mean, who can catch the ball and run around
really well.
I mean, and that's why I compared him to the Matt Forte, another big back who can get the yards in between the tackles, be your goal line back, but that can be really integrated into the passing game.
I mean, there's just not much to. What are your cons? What do you not like about him?
There wasn't really anything particular that I saw that I didn't like about him. I mean, like you said, he wasn't that. You didn't really see a lot of his agility on tape, but I don't think it's necessarily because it's not there. I just he kind of cedes to his power and those those churning legs and the way that he finishes forward. But really, I mean, yeah, you have a big back like that can catch passes. I mean, I just hope it's not like a Derrick Henry situation where somebody doesn't recognize that at the next level.
Oh, they're not going to do it. Because with Derrick Henry, it wasn't part of the reason that you drafted him. We didn't really see it in college the way that we saw it on just there at the pro day, right? Derrick Henry pro day was the epic receiving show that he put on, right? With Charbonnet, a lot of people thought that he wasn't going to come back for his senior season. One of the reasons he said he came back was to really show off, what he thought was a really key part of his skill set, which was the way that he can be a receiver. So he showed it. He did it in spades, as far as I'm concerned. So my question to you, Trash Man, is it Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet?
You could argue for Charbonnet for number 2, in my opinion.